This was only my third mushroom trip, and by far the heaviest and deepest I've had. The mushrooms I got were so incredibly potent, it's quite hard to describe. The guy says he gets them from Humboldt, California, which leads me to believe they could have been Psilocybin azurescens, which may explain why I tripped so hard. I'm also a really skinny guy. Anyways, my buddy and I were just hanging out in my room, and I munched down my shrooms. We sat back and waited for the magic to take hold of us. My friend had shroomed 3 days prior, so he barely got any noticeable effects. Me, however, it'd been a few months, so I was in for a ride. The onset. Got the classic symptoms of tripping, the walls began to breathe, and I began seeing incredibly complex intertwining patterns along the walls and everything. They closely resembled those Celtic designs you see in fairy tale books and such. Then I noticed how overbearing the body load had become. I had the shakes badly. My body twitched everywhere, and my arms felt incredibly full, like that feeling when they fall asleep. My legs ached. I began to sweat out of every pore in the most uncomfortable fashion. This led to me having some anxiety because I'd experienced blacking out on mushrooms before and was scared it would happen again, because my body literally felt like it could not deal with this sudden change. This is all occurring about an hour into the trip. About another 30 minutes later, my hallucinations were climbing up the ladder steadily. I began seeing very thin red stripes coming through reality and onto our plane of existence. They swam around my room almost to the beat of the music we had playing, but still seeming like they had a mind of their own. My room had become twisted, my desk now a formless mass that I could barely make out, and my friend's keyboard looked as if it had split into 3 or more of itself and were floating on top of each other. Parts of my room had a distinct color and feel to it. The air seemed thick. Still writhing from the body load, I laid down in bed and covered myself with my blanket. For some reason, the blanket really helped. I felt it was a very comforting feeling to have, and so I closed my eyes, and that's where the trip takes an insane and unexpected turn. The things I saw in this vision will remain with me for the rest of my life, and have most likely permanently changed my view on everything. The first entity. I began to drift. I could hardly feel my senses anymore, but I began seeing images. First, there were just those Celtic patterns, and then they started to form shapes. Then all of a sudden, an entity appeared before me. I cannot think of the correct words to describe it, nor can I recall much of my encounter with it. I only saw it from the back. It looked kind of like the creature Kirsty Cotton encounters when she first opens up the lament configuration, the one that hooks onto the walls and crawls towards her, trying to eat her. Well, I saw something that closely resembles that, but it was swimming away from me in some kind of viscous material I could not see. It swam through this doorway to no place I could see, as if it was just visiting me and was leaving before I could even notice it was there. It was only present for a few moments, and then it left, not to return upon this trip. I am still trying to figure out what this entity's purpose was in the trip, or what he symbolized, but the answer still eludes me. The closest I've gotten to an answer is that seeing him swimming away represented my normal state of consciousness going with him out that door into the unknown. The goddess. After the previous entity left, I began to become aware of another. I then realized that she had been present the entire time, and I was in fact part of her and inside her. She first appeared, rolling some kind of orb down her elbow and into me. This happened several times. Then she began to spiral and was surrounded by all these intertwining designs, possibly made of vines or roots. She seemed to be made of a tree, or was part of a tree, or symbolized the tree. Her roots, the tree's roots, were crawling around in some kind of swirling pattern. Then I realized that the roots, or at least in between the roots, were snakes. The entire trip took place inside this goddess. She was present at all times. I believe she symbolized the tree of life. Was the tree of life itself, or was the spirit of the tree? All I knew when I saw her is that we were very much connected, and that it definitely was a she. Her presence was incredibly feminine, and I knew this instantly. She never seemed to speak in the sense of moving her lips or anything like that. However, I did hear some of her thoughts. She told me that everything is one, that we all look out for each other, that there is nothing to fear. We will take care of you. At this point, my body load was overly intense. It got to the point that I thought I might pass out because my body felt so messed up. The goddess then told me, "Have faith in your body. It is a spirit too, and it will look out for you. We won't let anything happen to you." This moment also made me realize that I need to take better care of my body, eating less junk food, quitting cigarettes, etc., etc. The goddess' primary colors seemed to be black, dark brown, gray, and a very dark green. She may have embodied the life force, or the actual feeling of unity that one encounters on psychedelics. The third entities. Possible one or a few of these entities appeared to me. They seemed very alien in appearance, kind of like the gray men people claim to be abducted by. There were at the most 3, no more. They did not say anything or send me any thoughts that I can recall, and they were only present for a moment as well. It also may have been a singular entity that represented itself as a trio. They seemed to have some kind of clothes on, but it's hard to say. The clothes most closely resembled a robe, with a large rounded-out collar, the kind that you see wizards wearing in movies and stuff. They said nothing, but instead seemed to be observing me. It was an incredibly strange but brief encounter. The book. For a moment, I was alone, but still inside the goddess. I saw what appeared to be a book, or some kind of tome, laying down with its pages spread. I didn't see this from above, but instead from the side, so that I could see all the pages in definition. The book's pages began to slip from its cover and fall somewhere. Not quite below, not quite above, but I knew they fell. I'm not sure what this book symbolized, but the book itself appeared to be of the golden color books get when they are very old, and the pages tint with age. My closest feeling to understanding the book is that the book represented the lost knowledge of mankind, that there is so much for us to learn, and yet we choose not to, and thus the pages of this wisdom fell from our grasp. Departing. My trip was interrupted by a phone call from my girlfriend and had to answer it. When I answered it, I could faintly hear the goddess saying, "Come back. Come back. Stay with us," as if she desperately wanted me to return. After the phone call, I went back into the vision and encountered her in what appeared to be a very large spherical space. In this room, the previous other entities were present as well, although they remained silent. There seemed to be a feeling of sadness, but also joy. Sadness because I had to leave now, because the mushroom's effects were starting to wear off. And joy because I felt amazingly grateful that I was able to meet these entities, and that they allowed me to learn from them. Turned into energy. I became aware again of the music that was playing, and I had often thought to myself how powerful and bright this song was. I wasn't far from the truth, apparently. I felt my being turned into some kind of spiraling bolt of energy. It seemed like I was made of a long tube of energized light. I felt my body turned into lightning as I shot out of this dimension that I was in. I opened my eyes, and although I was still hallucinating, the visuals had become more mild. The red strings coming through the other planes of existence had vanished. My room looked somewhat normal again, and the colors had began to dull. Coming out of the trip, I was looking at my snake and realizing how beautiful a creature it really was, how spiritual and mystical they really are. It glowed with its own unique aura. It glowed with life. Looking at it made me realize that I need to take care of my body, that my body was a part of this life force, and that my body felt so exhausted from the trip because I hadn't been giving it the proper nutrients it required. Snakes have always been a recurring element of my dreams, ever since I was a child. Now, since this trip, and seeing them being intertwined with the roots of the goddess, I feel even more connected and fascinated with them.